Hi everyone, I'm Doc.
And I'm Indigo Moon.
And together we are the Psychic Realm
of Secret Magic.
Alright, today we're going to talk about ghosts. And this is a subject that is near and dear to both of our hearts, because you have a ghost in your house.
I do.
I have a ghost in my house, and we've done haunted house investigations in the past, and so we have some personal knowledge of ghosts and how to work with them and what they actually do.
Yep, and we're going to share some stories tonight about both of our houses, plus some places that we've been. And then we're also going to describe the type of ghosts, between ghosts and poltergeists, what the difference is. We're going to go through orbs. What else are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about going to haunted houses and which ones we've been to, and which ones are residual energies, and which ones are hauntings in the sense that they actually cause problems.
What about animal ghosts?
Animal ghosts.
I've got about them too.
Got them here in my house as well.
Oh yeah, I have animal ghosts as well.
Yeah. So, what is your definition of a ghost?
Well, my definition of a ghost is when we live and we pass on, part of our energy, not the whole part of our energy, just part of our energy stays in that particular lifetime. And that for me is a difference between an actual ghost and a poltergeist. For me, a poltergeist is the whole soul staying. And over time it gets more and more angry, more and more anxious, and therefore causes more mischief, has more energy behind it to cause more mischief. Whereas the ghost, because it's only part of our energy, small part, doesn't cause as much problems. Seems to be happier. They're more benevolent.
Well, I think for me, a ghost can be the entire person, the entire personality. I know with my particular ghost here in the house, Jim, he was a former owner who he didn't necessarily die in the house, but he owned the house when he passed away. And the interesting thing is, he doesn't mind me being here. He doesn't particularly care for women. And he's gotten used to my daughter, my oldest daughter, when she comes to visit. Even when you are here, of course you rarely come to a part of the house where he stays, and this is his part of the house. He really doesn't cause much trouble, but now that you're in his room or his space, he got a little agitated earlier today.
Yeah, he did. We were up here setting up to record, and all of a sudden we heard noises and knocks, and he was not too happy. He even said in my ear, "You're not supposed to be up here."
Yep. And that's the way he is.
Yeah.
But for the most part, he doesn't cause any problems. We'll hear him. I can hear him walking up here at night and that sort of thing. But for me, a ghost is the entire person. But I do understand where you're coming from, where it could just be if you will, a kind of a soul atom that's been split off and it remains with that particular.
And I'm not saying that every ghost is like that. Just in my limited experience, that I find that they're just pieces. Now, poltergeists, like I said, to me are the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think that the ghost in my house, Jim, I think he can go from being very calm to be very angry. And I know until I put my foot down with him, after my one particular time my daughter visited, he became so angry he literally knocked certificates off the wall. And so I think in that he kind of slid over to the poltergeist just a little bit. But it wasn't until I sat down with him and said, this is going to stop, or you're going to have to leave.
Well, what we have to keep in mind is the soul part of us does not know time and space.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if the other part of him in another lifetime came back for a moment to see what was going on here or visit his old space, and he was unhappy because he found somebody in his space, yes, they're going to get more agitated.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And of course, we, the ghost in your house,
we call him Grandpa Ghost.
Grandpa Ghost. He manifested, fully manifested for me 2 or 3 times, just to kind of set the rules that he's in charge, and he's very comfortable with me being in your home now. But at first he needed to set the ground rules that I'm the one who's in charge.
Now, I've only seen Grandpa Ghost a handful of times. First time, though, I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and he mainly stays downstairs in the basement, and he'll go upstairs to the top part of the house. And my mom asked me to go down to the fruit cellar and get a can of beans for dinner, and it's a very large house, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, okay. I'm not sure if I remember how to get there, but I went downstairs and opened the door to the fruit cellar, and there he was, full form. And scared the bejesus out of me. I ran back upstairs and told Mom to get her own can of beans. But that was the first time I saw him, and then over the years I've seen him manifest a couple of times, but not often. He just does not do that because he's not there as intending to scare us. He's a protector of the property, and if anybody comes in that he does not like or does not want to be there, he will let you know.
Well, he manifested 2 or 3 times in front of me, so and I realized that he was basically letting me know that, hey, I'm here. I watch over things. I watch over the people here who live here, and as long as I was okay with that, then he was okay with me being there. So I know growing up, there was some sort of either a ghost. Looking back on it, I think it was a demon that lived in our attic. No one wanted to go up to the attic. Even my father, who was a police officer, he was not comfortable going to the attic. And so there are different kinds of energies that can inhabit homes.
Well, I know growing up, my great-grandmother's house. I was lucky to know both of my great-grandmothers. But my great-grandmother on my mother's side lived in Omaha. And we knew from little on that her house had a very nasty poltergeist in it.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
Oh boy.
And this poltergeist, you did not go in the kitchen. If you went in the kitchen, you were assured that you were going to have something thrown at you.
Oh well,
yeah. Cupboard doors would open up, plates would throw across the room, even things, dangerous things like knives and forks and, oh yeah. But we had gone over there one time, me and my sister and my dad. My dad was going to go downstairs and fix the furnace, and we were in the parlor. Now, the parlor was the only safe space in this house. So my sister and I were sitting in there. My dad went downstairs to the basement, and a couple minutes later, my dad came back upstairs, and he's white as a sheet, and he's like, we're out of here. To this day, I don't know what happened down there, but something scared my dad. My dad's not easily spooked.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That does happen. There's no doubt about it. And speaking of being scared like that, we did a charity benefit up in St. Joseph at the Kemper Albrecht Museum, and we had heard tales of the museum being haunted, and we talked one of the workers there into taking us on a tour.
Now this is the second time we were there.
That second time we were there. And the lady's office was in the lower level, and I can remember I asked what's behind that door, and she said, she mentioned something, and immediately there were 2 or 3 knocks from the other side. And we all looked at each other because there was not supposed to be anybody on the other side.
Yeah.
And when she unlocked the door, of course it was pitch black, and reached around, turned on the light switch, and there was a set of stairs heading down, a little landing, and you walk down some stairs, and the next thing I know, before I can get to the bottom of the stairs, Indigo's laying on her back on the floor, and this ghost had literally pushed her.
And it felt like I was pushed, just right here, just bam. And that's the last thing I remember until you guys were like, "What? Are you okay?
How did you
get from the landing to the floor?" And I'm like, "I don't know. All I know is I was pushed."
Yes.
But the weird thing was how I fell, because you guys recalled the story. We had a friend with us, and her name is Jamie, and she recalls it as I went down, and I just pretty much went flat this way and then floated down with my hands like this
and slammed against the floor. Exactly.
But my clothes were perfectly positioned around me.
Exactly.
We were in costume. It was an October event, Halloween event in Witch's Tea, and we dress up. And I had this beautiful long coat on, and it was perfectly positioned around me.
It was just like you went over horizontal, slid out, and then bam, you were right on the floor.
And they both said it looked like I was in a casket.
You looked like you were ready for the casket. Yep. All we had to do is put it around you. So, but later on, that same ghost, I stepped into a room that, according to the lady who worked there, none of the workers feel comfortable going into this little space. It was like a storeroom or something.
Yeah.
And all I remember seeing a black slave taking a sledgehammer, and he was getting ready to swing it and hit me in the head, because I made it, ducked and said, "Oh, got to get out of here, because he's going to try to hurt me." And so we surmised that was probably the same ghost. Who pushed you. So I guess the lesson here is we really don't know what's going to happen.
No, you don't know.
Into a haunted house.
Yeah. And he didn't like us being in the space for whatever reason. He may, we surmised that he may have recognized me, that I may have been living there at the time that he was living there. And of course, that's a past life thing. We will go through past lives in another video, but.
If I remember correctly, that had been a plantation.
Yes.
Home, a tobacco plantation.
And the woman sold the slaves' children quite regularly. And what we surmised is that he was afraid I was coming and taking one of his children to sell. And he recognized me, and he pushed me out of his way to escape.
And I think if I remember correctly, he took me as the local sheriff, or part of the sheriff's. And I was going to be hunting down slaves who might have run away. And so he most definitely wanted us out of his space. Yeah, he did. He did not like us in his space at all. So now we were back this year too, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. And we did not really an investigation, but we toured a haunted mansion here in Independence, Missouri. I believe it was the Vale Mansion. And the lady taking us on a tour told us about the family and all of this. And I remember looking at this desk, and I said, "Well, who's the man smoking the cigars?" And she gave me a real funny look, and it was like, "Well, that would have been so-and-so, but how'd you know that?" And I said, "Well, he's still sitting there." Yeah. And I think you had the same experience. Only it was we were in a different room, and it was the music room, and there was a piano there, and all of a sudden I heard piano music, and I saw this woman sitting at the piano, and I said, "Well, who's the woman playing the piano?" And she again goes, "You two are get out." Yeah, she was a bit uncomfortable with the fact that we could see the spirits, and really, for me, this is what we would call a residual haunting. It's just the energy. They love the house so much, they just simply are kind of repeating and that's what I'm talking about, that small amount of energy. Exactly. Staying because they enjoyed that space. Sure, exactly. There was something about that space that they really liked, or that they needed to continue. And I think for both of them, again, it was keeping the legacy up on the house, making sure that the house was taken care of, that it was enjoyed by all. Yes. I got the feeling when we were there that they enjoyed having parties there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's just like the Albrecht Museum. The people who owned it, is, in matter of fact, the people who originally owned the mansion was the man who the man owned the company that made the Big Chief tablets that 30, 40 years, 50 years ago was commonplace in grade schools. That's what kids used in grade schools.
Yeah, the chalk tablets.
Yeah. And so they were used to parties, but we realized that the wife often used her parlor, if you will, for seances. And so that's where we feel that much of the negativity probably came in, and it kind of opened up a doorway and allowed those.
Well, also at the Albrecht, when we were taking a tour of the upstairs, do you remember me asking about the woman hanging from the chandelier?
Yes, yes.
They had a servant hang herself in, it was like this center room. The bedrooms were all around.
Yes.
But there was this huge chandelier there, and I happened to see her hanging there, and I think that's part of that negative energy in that space.
Exactly, exactly. And if I remember correctly, at I believe it was the Vale Mansion, we walked by one particular, to them it was a closet, to us it just looked like a little cubby hole, and I think we both kind of went, what is that? It smells like sweat. And this was an area where they hung their clothes up because there was some sort of ventilation, and they didn't have dry cleaning, so they had to air their clothes out during the day to get this.
Well, and it probably wasn't allowed for them to hang things outdoors.
Yeah, they could be.
They hung their masters' things outdoors, but slaves typically didn't get to hang their things outdoors.
Yeah.
So
They
had this ventilation shaft that they would hang the
clothes
over to dry.
Air them out. Yep. So it was. You never know when you go to a place that's purportedly haunted what you're going to actually find.
Yep.
Very much so.
So we touched on animal spirits.
Oh, yes.
Those two a little bit. Your little dog,
yes.
Layla, constantly runs around here.
All the time. She was a little Yorkie, and she and I were linked. I believe that she was also the dog that I had growing up, and I'd had a number of surgeries, major surgeries, and she just, when I came home from the hospital, she would never leave my side. She sat with me in my chair. The only time she got up was to go outside, do her business, or to eat, and that was it. And when she crossed over, she still feel her walking on the bed, because she used to sleep on the bed with me, and I don't know how many times you've had to look at me and like, what are you doing, and realize it's the
dog.
So even animals can come back to the place that they felt comfortable with, or with the people that they loved. And
well, I had a cat. His name was Max, and he actually died in a different location, but he came back to the original house he lived in. So I always thought that, every now and again I see Max coming around the corner, or I'll hear him at the house, and it kind of shocks me because he didn't die there.
Yes.
But he still found his way back. So they can do that as well.
Very much so, yes. I know I had a cocker mix that passed away a number of years ago, and he had a lot of pain, so he had difficulty sleeping, and I could hear him at night, and he would walk through the kitchen and the bedroom into the bathroom and back and forth, and even after he crossed over, I could hear his nails on the floor, on hardwood floor, walking through the rooms. And unfortunately, when he was alive, I could tell him to go lay down. I couldn't tell him that when he was a ghost. I couldn't.
Right.
It didn't work.
Didn't work.
It didn't work. So I just had to learn to live with it. But yes, our pets typically come back to us, and just an interesting thing, even when we cross over, and to make things less frightening to the soul when it crosses over. Many times we're going to meet our family pets or our favorite pets. They will show up to help us feel more at ease and more comfortable with the new environment.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's touch a little bit on the difference between a ghost and a spirit.
And a spirit.
And a spirit. So what is your definition, or what is the difference for you?
Well, I think that in many cases they're both energies, but a ghost, as you say, is a fraction. It's like a soul piece of an atom of that soul, that personality that still wants to be attached to a particular space. But generally with spirits, it's pure energy. They're pure energy. And those spirits can go from very low energies to very high energies, such as orbs, as we discussed before.
I would totally agree with you on that.
Spirits, and spirits do have the ability to manifest in human form if they feel that it's necessary, or if it's the only way that you can be comfortable with them.
All right, let's talk about orbs.
Orbs. Okay.
They are part of the spirit realm.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of people see orbs, especially in photographs. Now I have an old friend. He's dead now. He's passed away. He lived in South Dakota, and this was late 1800s, early 1900s. And he always talks about the orbs going across the prairie. And some people call them will-o-wisps. There's other names for them, fairies, whatever you'd like to call them. But to me, these are all higher energy forms.
Yes, I would agree.
It's pure energy, but it's the purest of the energy.
Purest, yeah. And I think these orbs, I don't believe that they ever take human form. I think they just stay as an orb.
Sometimes, although I have heard that they do resemble fairies. They will resemble fey creatures of some sort, angels, different things like that, but they are of a higher energy form.
And they are intelligent. They're very intelligent, and they do react to human touch, that sort of thing.
Well, you tell the story of your grandmother.
Yes. Even though I did not know him, my great-great-grandfather was an itinerant merchant. My grandmother and her family, they were all from Croatia in Yugoslavia, and he had taken her on a particular trip with him, and they had crossed the mountains, and coming back, they wintered with a clan of gypsies that he was familiar with, and they knew him, and they welcomed him into their clan to stay with the winter with him. And there was an evening in which there was a lot of murmuring, and the men were talking among themselves, and the women were talking among themselves. And she said her grandfather went and talked to the men to find out, and they just said, well, something's going to happen. And it was right around dusk, and she said as they watched in this valley, there was a string of lights of orbs that followed each other, just a whole string, and they kind of moved through the valley, came up to the gypsy camp, and one of them came up to my grandmother, who was only probably about 8 or 9 years old, and as she reached out to try to touch it, it would back off, but it would get brighter in color and expand and then get smaller. And as she tried to touch it again, it would do the same thing, and then all of a sudden, boom, it was gone, and they followed a string of lights and went off back in the valley.
Now, the difference between that orb and Mr. Jensen's orb was that he could never get close to it. They would always be off in the distance, and no matter how many steps they took toward it, they never got any closer. Well,
this one happened, as I recall, it came up close to her, and she reached out to try to touch it, and it wouldn't allow her to touch it, but it responded to her by getting bigger and brighter, and then it would go back smaller again. And orbs are intelligent. They're aware of us, and sometimes they just, the spirit world just needs to let people know it's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. So
we have a book that we want to share with you. You all might be interested in buying this book or reading this book.
It's called Real Ghosts and Restless Spirits and Haunted Places by Brad Steiger. This was a man who did countless investigations in haunted houses, paranormal experiences. He talks about, in fact, he was one of the first back in the late 60s to talk about star seeds and star people.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I know that even though he has crossed over, you can still purchase his books on Amazon and other outlets. But that's an excellent book. It talks about haunted places, haunted houses.
It also gives definitions of what these things are and gives his perspective on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you guys might want to check it out. Remember to like and subscribe to this channel. We're going to cut it off now, but we do have more to talk about this subject. So if we missed something or you would like us to touch on something, write in the comments.
Please, by all means,
Yep.
send us your comments. If you'd like to hear more, and you want like us to be a little bit more specific about certain subjects, please let us know. Subscribe. That's our channel can only get bigger if you subscribe.
That's right. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you the next time.
Thank you now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.